reviews, discussions, and theories about films in horror, sci-fi, and genre. This is the Horror Deconstruction. Like, share, and subscribe to hear more.
What's up, everybody? It's the Horror Deconstruction. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, most likely on YouTube. Give us a like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon. Hit that thumbs up with your host Comp for today, 31 Days of Horror. Today's film we're talking about is Broadcast Signal Intrusion 2021. In the late 90s, a video archivist unearths a series of sinister pirate broadcasts and becomes obsessed with uncovering the dark conspiracy behind them. Directed by Jacob Gentry, written by Phil Drinkwater and Tim Woodall, based on their short, starring Harry Shum Jr., Kelly Mack, and Chris Sullivan. So, how did I hear about this film? Well, I'd seen a cover for it flashing across Shudder. You can find this film on Shudder, and over I just seen it. I heard little things here and there about how interesting of a horror film it is. It looked interesting. The premise was pretty cool. It's about this archivist who starts seeing these weird broadcast intrusions. If you ever know anything about them, the big one was obviously the one with this guy wearing a Max Headroom mask. There's plenty of them. If you go on, you can go on a YouTube tunnel of just videos where they compile all the most interesting and weirdest broadcast signal intrusions. It's a very rare occurrence, but it does happen where somebody will cross wires and pirate video over streaming television, not streaming television, but analog television and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm sure it's possible now to still do that stuff, but obviously the biggest one is if you just Google Max Headroom broadcast intrusion, and you'll see what that is. Well, what this film does is it stars Harry Shum Jr. as a guy who had recently is still grieving over the loss of his wife. It's very ambiguous on how she's just disappeared. His wife disappeared. Starts out with her. She was jogging into the mist and she just vanished. He never heard from her again. So he is in this sort of downward spiral, or more of a pause on his life, where he is just doing video archiving and just living as opposed to really living his life. And he goes to these group meetings of people that have loved ones that disappeared and stuff like that. And I really like Harry Shum Jr. in this role. Harry Shum Jr. comes from the show Glee, a show I never watched, but I feel is a cursed series because a lot of people in that series got screwed. And apparently he's moving on to other stuff. I just heard an audio drama that he's part of called Echo Park, which is pretty good. But Harry Shum Jr. is a really good lead in this film. And I don't want to spoil the film, so I'm not going to get into too spoilerific territory here. I'm just going to talk about the short film that it was based on and the film itself as a sort of weird noir. It's not necessarily it is a horror film because it certainly has horror elements to it, but it's a noirish film. Specifically, even the music is very urban noir, and they treat this film like a noir film, but a noir film with a horror film lensing to it. There's even specific parts that definitely point towards the film Zodiac by David Fincher. There's definitely a scene that is completely lifted off from Zodiac, where these characters are talking to a third character and they can hear stuff happening up on the top floor, which happens exactly in Zodiac, and that is reused here, which is fine. It's used to good effect. But the main thing that it's focusing on is while Harry's character, James, is obsessing over the the disappearance of his wife. I think she vanished for so long that they just put it out there that she's dead, And while he's doing an archive job, he basically is recording stuff. If you sort of get a kick for archiving in movies, there's a series on Netflix, unfortunately, which only got one season, called Archive 81. You can hear our review. Me and Thea review that show. Really good series. Abruptly ended, but it ends in a place where I guess it could be not a good ending, but it's an ending for the show. So go watch Archive 81. So if you want to see more archiving stuff, so this guy's archiving this material, and he's just sort of logging down this footage that he has to double, just to keep in the archives, and a broadcast signal intrusion happens in one of them. Now, they did not go with the Max Headroom way with this film. They decided to ape this other internet quote-unquote creepypasta video, a video that's been out for a long time ago, called I Feel Fantastic, and that is a film that a short that has been on the internet for as long as I can remember. It was made by a guy named John L. Bergeron. I will actually put a link on the bottom of this video where a writer did a very extensive and intrusive look into the I Feel Fantastic creepy video, which is basically an android, a singing android in this house, and it's very poorly filmed. And I remember when I saw it when I was younger, and I was very creeped out by it. It's just like this sole android in a bad sweater singing, and it's very disturbing video. But anyway, they used that as the basis for this. I wasn't sure if whoever, because I knew once you see it in the trailer, I was like, oh, that's the I Feel Fantastic. They're doing that. I don't know what the rights issues are, because I don't know if I Feel Fantastic is like a copyrighted thing. I guess it's not. And I guess you can just tweak it enough that it's different so it doesn't look like that. But that's certainly what it's based on, the I Feel Fantastic video, which was not a broadcast signal intrusion. It was just like an internet creepy video. And I gotta say, they didn't do it justice. They did not make... I don't think they did it good. The I Feel I think this was actually the director. It was a second guy that did the quote unquote I Feel Fantastic videos for the intrusions in this movie, and I don't think they did a good job with them. I think they feel like try hard, because after I'd seen this film and I was like, oh, that's not really well done. I saw I didn't know it was based on a short from the UK. The writers of that and directors of that wrote this version of the film, and their version of the film actually has closer to the original I Feel Fantastic, because they use an android in the original one. The short film is more about a guy getting a psychosis and cross wiring this conspiracy theory to his personal tragedy. It's the same setup in the short film, but I don't want to spoil that. But I believe that this film fleshes that out better, but the film does still have a bit of a confusing finale to it. It answers some questions while leaving more open, especially a super big question towards the end of the movie. And I remember going on YouTube. Let me just make sure what I thought was right about this film, because there are some YouTube channels that explain stuff. And there was I think there was a YouTube channel that says, "What the F happened to in this movie, Broadcast Signal Intrusion?" And I watched the whole video, which was like 22 minutes, and it was just basically recapping the whole film, and then they added an ending, which felt like a cop out, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. I think they were just being on purpose ambiguous with this film. So let me go back to the film, Broadcast Signal Intrusion. So Harry, I believe that the psychosis that Harry's character is going through towards the film is much more believable in this, and much more than the 16-minute. As a short film, you got to take shortcuts with it. But I believe James's slow descent into, I guess, madness. He doesn't seem as like overly crazy in this film, but I don't think that way. He ends up being joined by Kelly Mack, who plays Alice, who is trying to... I don't know why. She just sort of appears out of nowhere, and she seems to be like helping him for no reason in this movie. I thought maybe she had some sort of connection for some reason to randomly help this guy who she sees on a payphone, randomly talking to people. She stands ominously in the shadows with a hood on in the beginning of the film. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, what does this character do? You'd think that she knows something that he knows, but she doesn't. But does she really not know? And you're left with the idea that she doesn't. And regardless, there's a big mystery in this film, which I do feel that they did well with, as in the pacing and the noir and mystery element of the movie. And Harry Shum Jr. really carries the film as this guy who is disassociated, and he's not unaffected, but he's very affected by everything that has happened to him, and he carries this weight with his character. I think the acting across the line is really good. My only down is that broadcast video, because instead of using an android in this version, they sometimes use it seems like they don't have any money for an android in this version, even though the short film, which is 16 minutes long, has an android in it. They have sort of that, but then they'll have some guy dressed up as an android, doing some goofy like body work, like if he's being creepy, and it's just like, to me, it just felt like lame. The videos in this were like lame, and they weren't scary. They were just sort of like, oh, that's just a guy writhing around with a mask on. That's not scary at all. The idea of it is scary, but I think that is the only screw up in this movie. I thought everything else is pretty top notch, including the score. It's a very noirish score, and I really, really enjoyed the music in this. Surprisingly, out of horror films, usually everything is sort of atonal and weird and just offbeat. There's other characters like Michael B. Woods plays McAllister, as a guy who's been completely affected trying to find the reasoning behind the tapes, because there's a whole big conspiracy. Much like I Feel Fantastic, there was on the internet, they always add on some BS storyline to these creepy videos, and they say, oh, these videos and the I Feel Fantastic videos were created by a serial killer. See that shot of outside the house? That's where he hid the bodies. So there is a serial killer element in this movie as well. And I think that they tie it up well in an ambiguous way in this film. I think that Alice is interesting, but I think they could have written her character better into the film. She's fine as she is, like her character's fine, but her self-insertion into the movie makes no sense. Now, if I was to believe that What the F Happened video, then it makes more sense. But that's too much of a reach for me, even. So I would suggest go watching the movie and then go watch the What the F Happened, or an explanation of broadcast signal intrusion, because I don't think anybody has a real answer unless it's the original writers Phil Drinkwater and Tim Woodall, because there's no real sort of cut ending to it. If you take it at face value of what happens in this film, you see the guy going crazy and solving what it is, but then the last actual 3 minutes of the film, you're just like, what the hell? What just happened? Like, what am I watching? Which is, in a way, filling a horror quota, but also filling a what the hell did I just watch? Is this a disappointing ending? Which it could be a disappointing ending, because if it just sort of goes out there, like, what the hell did I just watch? The first almost 2 hours of this movie. But I think all around, it's an interesting film. I like this type of offbeat, cloak and dagger mystery, to solve within horror land type of movie. So and Harry Shum Jr. is great as the lead. I think he plays a pretty compelling lead character. I think the way the movie is shot, the way it's edited, it's a beautiful looking film, really well done. I think the attention to detail is great. I say the only thing to me the screw up is the actual broadcast video, which you're selling the movie on. Now, I think since I'm so used to the original video, that might make me feel leaning towards one side. So it might affect people in another way, I think. But I think in general, I think it's a solid little horror film, a solid mystery horror film that I think is worth your time. So give it a look. I will give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. Looking for that Android girl. Looking for that Android girl and see if she can give you some answer. And with that, this has been the Hard Deconstruction. Thanks for listening.